The future is in our hands.
The business community is kind of taking a wait-and-see attitude. He's a new phenomenon. Until he won the primary election in June, they really didn't know or care who he was. He was an anonymous assemblyman.
Kathryn Wylde is the president and CEO of Partnership for New York, a group that represents businesses in the city.
The fact that, what they say is, would you hire a 33-year-old kid to run a 300,000 person business? And the answer is no. But this is politics. He's been elected mayor, and so now the question for the business community is how to make sure he's successful and that the city thrives under his leadership.
And there are two parts in being successful. One is what he wants to do, and one is whether he can do it. Start with the first, because this is a really tough place to run, as you know. What does he need to be able to effectuate whatever he wants to get accomplished?
Well, he wants to make the city more affordable, and he equates that to lower price of groceries, universal child care, free buses, and he talks about freezing the rent. When it gets to all of those issues, obviously the question is how you accomplish them. If you try and do it by raising taxes, which he's talked about, then the affordability crisis just gets worse because the cost of rising taxes is passed along to businesses who pass it along to consumers, and all New Yorkers will pay. So we've got to find some better solutions. I was encouraged last night in his acceptance speech when he was announced as the mayor-elect with 50+% of the votes. The first thing he started with, and he never mentioned raising taxes last night. He started with, well, I'm going to make a more efficient government. And that business likes to hear.
One of the things we have in this country is the ability to vote with your feet, to actually leave and go someplace else. That's one of the questions we're asked more often than any other. Is it likely that particularly some of the more wealthy members of the business community will actually leave for other places like Florida? What do you think?
I don't think it's likely. I mean, the real question is, will we be able to continue to attract top talent to the city? I mean, New York is a place that people want to be. There's a lot of benefits to being in New York, and as long as people don't feel they're being abused and taken advantage of, demonized, the biggest challenge right now for us is really that other states and countries are competing for our jobs, for our tax dollars, and we have to show that New York is, again, a reasonable cost place to do business and to live. The premium in the financial industry, the premium for somebody doing the same job here in New York or doing it in Tennessee or Florida or Texas is more than 20% more than employers have to pay for talent to have a comparable lifestyle in New York. And that's a pretty big delta.
Mr. Mamdani was elected in no small part on his pledge to make New York City more affordable, particularly when it comes to housing and other real estate, including a promise to freeze the rent for the 2 million New Yorkers living in rent-stabilized apartments.
There are a number of things we can do to get the cost of rent down, the cost of building operations down, I should say. And he has said and has amended his original oversimplified one-liner, freeze the rent. I said to him months ago, how do you freeze the rent if you can't freeze the costs? And we had a discussion about how 30% of the rent is real estate taxes. And he subsequently amended his comments to say, I understand that real estate taxes on rental housing have to come down. And said, I will be the mayor who reforms property taxes. Now, that is good news. That will help the rent-stabilized units, of which there are over 1 million in New York City, and so that's a lot of tenants that will benefit.
A mandate for a city we can afford. And a mandate for a government that delivers exactly that.
I think Mamdani's brilliance is he has tapped into something that New Yorkers are frustrated by and really care about, which is costs. It's expensive to live here. Particularly housing is expensive. I have young adult children in New York that are dealing with this.
Owen Thomas is the CEO of BXP Properties, the largest publicly traded developer, owner, and manager of premium offices in the United States.
In terms of what he's trying to do, which is bring down costs, BXP, myself, we'd be fully aligned with that goal. We would welcome it and would like him to do it. I think the issue is some of the policies that he describes on how he wants to do that, I don't think are the right ones to accomplish the objective. So for example, putting in rent controls. If you put in rent controls, that is going to prevent private capital from coming into the market and building the housing that's going to be required. New York needs hundreds of thousands of housing units. That capital is not going to come from the public sector. It has to come from the private sector. So the government needs to put in place some incentives and rules to allow that private capital to come in and fund these projects. And if that's done, I think it can be very successful.
Building new apartment buildings is one way to get the price of housing down. Another is to take some of the underused office buildings and convert them to residential. After the pandemic, offices inside some of the most iconic buildings in the New York City skyline have remained vacant. Some developers say that's where they see an opportunity.
There's a very broad spectrum of buildings that are out there. There are brand new AA buildings, and like you said, they are doing extraordinarily well. But there are also buildings that are older, but are loft-like, that are in places like Soho or Tribeca or Union Square. It's a lot about location. It's a lot about the physical qualities of the building. It's a lot about the owner of the building and if they've upgraded them or added amenities. So the office market is a spectrum.
One of two light wells that we created, which go 25 stories down in the building.
Brian Steinwurtzel is the co-CEO of GFP. His firm is behind the conversion into rental apartments of JP Morgan's former headquarters just off Wall Street.
So we are at 25 Water Street. It was a 1.1 million square foot office building that was designed to look like an IBM punch card. So it had very few windows around the building. And we bought this building at the end of December 2022, and we turned it into 1,320 apartments. We did this by removing most of the brick on the outside of the building and carving 2 light wells into the building. And that allowed us to create all of these apartments. And it also allowed us to take that extra floor area and build 10 stories on top of the building. We had a very ambitious plan when we bought the building, and we feel very fortunate that it's come to fruition.
Steinwurtzel was early to the conversion business. Now the pipeline of conversions totals 81 million square feet as of May, up from 71 million square feet just months ago. An incentive called 467M gives developers like GFP a tax break for taking on the capital-intensive challenge of converting offices into apartments.
What that says is if you start a conversion of an office building to residential, I think the project has to break ground by the middle of 26. If you do that, you can have a tax abatement for 30 years. And as a result of that rule, and for the oversupply of office, there are about 13 million square feet of office buildings today in New York that are being converted to residential. So I think that's a terrific example of the private sector and the public sector working together on a plan. And these conversions are perfect, right? We certainly need less office. We need more housing. The city ultimately will get more tax revenue. There's more vibrancy, there's more affordability, and there's less of an environmental impact by basically reusing a building as opposed to tearing one down and building one from scratch. And I hope this program will grow. Now, one thing that really helps with these conversions in New York is rents are so high. So you can put in the base building at a higher per square foot value and still have all the numbers work for a private investment. And that also helps, but the local regulation definitely helps as well.
Although office to residential conversions could be a step in the right direction, that alone is not enough to take care of the problem.
Over the last decade plus, we've recognized that we are not building enough housing in New York City. And let's face it, we're very fortunate that people want to live in New York City. This is a city that continues to grow. There are more jobs in New York City now than there ever have been in the history of the city. And so with all of these people that want to live here, we need to create more housing. And the challenge is it's still New York City, so it's very expensive to acquire land or buildings. It's very expensive to build here, and it's very complicated. We have a lot of people that live in a very close proximity to each other, and so we need to be careful about how we build so that we're becoming part of the community and not upsetting it. But with that recognition that we need to build more housing, there is much more focus on it, And we're happy to be part of the solution to New York City's problems of creating housing. But we need a lot more than just converting office buildings to residential in order to solve this problem for our city.
Mayor-elect Mamdani pledges to add thousands of apartments to New York City. To have a hope of succeeding, he's going to need a good deal of help from those working under him in his new administration.
We're always waiting and seeing what a new administration does. There are a lot of people that work in a city administration that make it happen. Cutting the amount of time it takes to build housing is probably one of the top things that they can do. So putting people in office that are willing to empower their departments and their divisions to actually make decisions, to review plans, to issue permits quicker are going to be things that we'll be looking to see. Or are they putting people in place that are looking to add regulation, to add obstacles or hurdles that will make creating housing more difficult?